Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Reader's Workshop. So for today's Reader's Workshop, you're not going to see my face because I want to project the book. So here is the book that we are going to be reading. It's called Curious George. So today we're going to talk about characters in a book. Okay, so we're going to talk about how characters are alike and how they can be different. So first we're going to go ahead and read the book, and then we will investigate or look into the characters a little further. So the title of this book is called Curious George. Curious George by H.A. Rey. This is George. He lived in Africa. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. One day George saw a man. He had on a large yellow straw hat. The man saw George too. What a nice little monkey, he thought. I would like to take him home with me. He put his hat on the ground, and of course George was curious. He came down from the tree to look at the large yellow hat. The hat had been on the man's head. George thought it would be nice to have it on his own head. He picked it up and put it on. The hat covered George's head. He couldn't see. The man picked him up quickly and popped him into a bag. George was caught. The man with the big yellow hat put George into a little boat, and the sailors rowed them both across the water to a big ship. George was sad, but he was still a little curious. On the big ship, things began to happen. The man took off the bag. George sat on a little stool, and the man said, "George, I'm going to take you to a big zoo in a big city. You will like it there. Now run along and play, but don't get into trouble." George promised to be good, but it is easy for little monkeys to forget. On the deck, he found some seagulls. He wondered how they could fly. He was very curious. Finally, he had to try. It looked easy, but... Oh, what happened? First this, then this. Where is George? The sailors looked and looked, and at last they saw him struggling in the water and almost all tired out. "Man overboard!" the sailors cried, and they threw him a life belt. George caught it and held on. At last he was safe on board. After that, George was more careful to be a good monkey, until, at last, the long trip was over. George said goodbye to the kind sailors, and he and the man with the yellow hat walked off the ship onto the shore and onto the city where the man's house. And after a good meal and a good pipe, George felt very tired. He crawled into bed and fell asleep at once. The next morning, the man telephoned the zoo. George watched him. He was fascinated. Then the man went away. George was curious. He wanted to telephone too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What fun! Ding-a-ling-a-ling! George had telephoned the fire station. The firemen rushed to the telephone. "Hello? Hello?" they said. But there was no answer. And then they looked for the signal on the big map that showed where the telephone call had come from, and they didn't know it was George. They thought it was a real fire. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" The firemen jumped onto the fire engines and onto the hook and ladders. "Ding dong, ding dong! Everyone out of the way! Hurry, hurry, hurry!" The firemen rushed into the house and they opened the door. No fire! Only a naughty little monkey. "Oh, catch him," they cried. George tried to run away. He almost did, but he got caught in the telephone wire, and a thin fireman caught one arm and a fat fireman caught the other. "You fooled the whole fire department," they said. "We will have to shut you up where you can't do any more harm." They took him away and shut him in a prison. George wanted to get out. He climbed up to the window and to try the bars. Just then the watchman came in. He got on the wooden bed to catch George, but he was too big and heavy. The bed tipped up and the watchman fell over. and quick as lightning, George ran out through the open door. He hurried through the building and out on the roof, and then he was lucky to be a monkey. Out he walked on the telephone wires, quickly and quietly over the guard's head. George walked away. He was free. Down in the street outside the prison wall stood a balloon man. A little girl bought a balloon for her brother. George watched. He was curious again. He felt he must have a bright red balloon. He reached over and tried to help himself, but instead of one balloon, the whole bunch broke loose. In an instant, the wind whisked them all away. With them went George, holding tight with both hands. Up, up, he sailed higher and higher. The houses looked like toy houses, and the people like dolls. George was frightened. He held on very tight. At first the wind blew in great gusts, then it quieted. Finally it stopped blowing altogether. George was very tired. Down, down he went, bump, on top of a traffic light. Everyone was surprised. The traffic got all mixed up and George didn't know what to do. And then he heard someone call, "George!" He looked down and saw his friend, the man with the big yellow hat. George was very happy, the man was happy too. George slid down the post, and the man with the big yellow hat put him under his arm. Then he paid the balloon man for all the balloons, and then George and the man climbed into the car, and at last away they went. To the zoo! What a nice place for George to live. The end. Okay, boys and girls, for this lesson, the two characters that we are going to look at is George and the man with the yellow hat. Okay, so we have George. And then we have the man. Okay, now we need to think about how are these two characters alike and how are they different? Okay, so we have George and we have the man. Well, first of all, the man, he is human, right? And George, he's a monkey. I'm trying to think of a way that makes them alike. Oh, in the middle here, how are they alike? Let's look here. Well, actually, boys and girls, they're both mammals. That means a warm-blooded animal. Okay. George, let's think about how he acts, okay? Sometimes he's a little naughty, right? Or sometimes he is a little curious. And if we look at the man with the yellow hat, he is often serious. He's always getting George out of trouble. Okay? So boys and girls, now you can see how characters in a book can be alike and how they are different. So now what I need you to do is to pick out your favorite book and read it to mom or dad or grandma and grandpa. And I want you to talk about the characters with your parents or your grandparents or whoever's helping you with your lessons. And I want you to talk about how they're alike and how they are different, okay? And that's all you have to do. Good luck, my friends. You got this.